Representative Louie Gohmert is speaking out against the hypocrisy of Democrats' prosecution of the January 6th. One America's John Hines has more from Washington.
Congressman Louie Gohmert, you have an op-ed in the conservative online journal American Greatness, calling out Democrats for hypocrisy, noting an incident in 2016 when Democrats seized the House chamber for several hours as a form of protest, versus now when Democrats and the Biden Department of Justice are pursuing January 6 protesters for, quote, obstructing an official proceeding. Sir, what inspired you to speak out about what you say is a double standard?
Well, I recall what happened in June of 2016 when it included most of the House Democrats. They seized the House floor. They refused to allow Republicans who were in the majority to go into session. And unlike January 6, when there was, like 5 or 6 hours are alleged as obstructing Congress, back then it's like this article says, they seized control for 26 hours. They would not allow us to go into session. And as some of the Democrat leaders back then said, look, we're breaking the rules. We don't care. And they refused to acknowledge that the Orlando shooting was a result of radical Islam. The shooter called and left a message with the AG saying it was for radical Islam, and he told other people it was for radical Islam, and they refused to acknowledge that. All of that, and frankly, John, I didn't know they were violating the law. But as we've seen since January 6, for many of the January 6 defendants, the most serious charge they have is not violent. It is obstructing an official session of Congress. Turns out that carries up to a 20-year sentence in prison. So since Merrick Garland says obstructing Congress, what happened on January 6th is, the most serious crime that we could have, then let's look. They had, it's normally a 5-year statute of limitations. They had several months. They could have investigated and prosecuted Democrat leaders in the House, in fact, a majority of the Democrats, if they really felt that. But either they're lying about obstructing Congress being so serious, or they just believe in a double standard, one for the Republicans and one for me Democrats.
So also, I understand that in 2016, this incident where your Democratic colleagues took to the floor and took over the floor of the House, they were also live streaming their event on social media, which I gather is breaking the House rules that restrict not only filming from the House floor, but also to broadcasting of official proceedings from the House chamber. And yet you note, I think, in your op-ed that no penalties were, there have been no prosecutions, no penalties. So.
Yeah, and the mere fact that we had a very weak Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, at the time that didn't do anything, that shouldn't have prevented the Democrat-controlled Department of Justice last year from going ahead and prosecuting that, if Merrick Garland's not lying and he thinks that charge is as serious as we can get. And keep in mind, John, that what happened in 2016 had never happened before, where one party prevented the majority party from going into session and obstructed on the House floor.
To what do you attribute this asymmetry of response, this asymmetry of justice, I guess, if you will?
Well, it appears that it's all about power. That it, of course, we've heard that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, but that's what it appears, that the power has gone to their heads, and they feel like, gee, when we're in charge, we can cheat, we can violate the law, we can do whatever we want, as long as it will help us, we believe, stay in power.
Congressman Louie Gohmert, thank you very much for talking to us on One American News, sir. It's good to catch up with you.
Thank you. Thanks for your inquiry.